Hello and welcome to The Promised Land, a show about Manchester United and part of the 90 Min podcast network. I'm Scott Saunders, joined as ever by Rob Blanchette. Manchester United fans, happy Manchester United fans. Would that be right to say, Rob, after some better performances in the last two games?
Happy because of performances, more happier because of results, not so happy because of a certain injury that we're going to talk about today. So, yeah, good, isn't it? Like, I think that United navigated this last week or so of games where, let's be honest, you could have really blown your Premier League charge, couldn't you, in this period? And you've just been kind of waiting and itching, haven't you, for your midfielders to get fit and not suspended anymore and move forward. And then what happens? Your big dog up top, who scored 38% of all your goals this year, blows up a hamstring or a groin. So we'll talk about all of that today. So, yes, certainly happier with the results, and let's hope Man United can continue that.
Yeah, how do you replace Marcus Rashford will be the topic of discussion today. Man United plays Sevilla in the Europa League on Thursday. I think it's safe to assume, even though as we record, we have not had a prognosis on the extent of Rashford's injury. We are expecting it to be a few weeks. I'm guessing so. The way he pulled up, it just didn't seem like that was something that was just a precaution. You can see the way he landed, pulled up straight away, bit of an injury, muscular injury, probably means a few weeks out. So how do you replace him? How do you get around him? Luckily enough, maybe you don't agree with this so much, Rob, but United do have in that left wing position probably more players who can play left wing than any other position on the pitch. So they have a few options. Whether they are good options remains to be seen, and we'll discuss that today.
Yeah, positionally isn't the issue for me. Scoring goals is. So it's about who scores your goals for you now. And Rashford scored such a huge slice of that cake this year. The fear has always been that if you lose Rashford, what do you do? And now the fear is you've lost Rashford, so decide what you're doing. So I think this is kind of where we fall back into the striker conversation. And obviously we'll be talking a lot about that this summer. I do think Man United will trigger that and go out and buy a striker. But this isn't really about the left wing for me or any of that. It's about the combinations of who you play through the middle. Who's the guy in the box you want the ball falling to? Is it Marcus Rashford? Or is it Weghorst? So I think you might get more Weghorst than you maybe care to see in the next few weeks. But there's no doubt the manager has to try something, doesn't he? He's going to have to take maybe a risk or two that we've not seen earlier in the season. Might have to play one or two players out of position.
Yeah, subscribe to our show wherever you get your podcasts, Apple, Google, Spotify, and the likes, and watch us on YouTube, usually twice a week, Tuesdays and Fridays. Head over to the channel, like, subscribe, leave a comment for us as well, and follow us on Twitter and get in touch @_Scott Saunders, @_Rob_B, and @PromiseLandMU for the show. We'll be talking mainly about that today because obviously the Everton game is now a few days ago. There was a few things we maybe learned in that game that we'll talk about today, but we won't go into it in too much depth because given it was now Saturday, Sunday, 4 days ago-ish, something like that. So old news in a sense, but United's next game is on Thursday night, as we mentioned, against Sevilla in the Europa League. Casemiro is back. Eriksen is back. Bruno Fernandes and Casemiro could, if they pick up a yellow card, be suspended for the return leg. So let's hope Casemiro never gets suspended ever again. But it remains to be seen. But we'll spend time on today's show talking about how United get around this Rashford issue, because we think that is probably going to be a massive challenge. Now, let us know in the comments or via social media, because I'm more worried about United without Casemiro, or I have been, than maybe I am about this. And Rob, you disagree?
Yeah, disagree, but only mildly. So, there's no doubt that without Casemiro, Manchester United are lesser, aren't you? You've had to change your whole system. You've gone from a 4-1-5 that's been highly successful to a 4-3-3 that's been a little bit bitty, but has worked the last two games. You've got to a point where Bruno Fernandes is now playing so deep or deeper because you're trying to compensate with ball movement and everything. So you're right. Casemiro not being in the team has been a huge issue for Man United. And you do hope now that he doesn't get injured or suspended or anything else for the rest of the season, because you really do need him. But I just think that Rashford has been so electric at the other end of the pitch this season that he's carried United and United's attack in a way that Casemiro's carried Man United's midfield, like hugely. Like we've talked about a lot of players, haven't we, in the front line of Man United this season. There's been loads of discourse about Antony's performances from United fans. Martial's been in and out with his injuries. Jadon Sancho has kind of been absent, but there can't help you. And we've got the others like maybe Palestri who've come in. Is Garnacho going to come back now and play a big part for the end of the season? There's always that as well. But Marcus has been pivotal. I think if you didn't have Marcus Rashford this year, you would not be top four. Like you would be nowhere near it because you just haven't got the guy that puts the ball in the net. Rashford scored you so many different types of goals, Scott. So that's why I feel more worried about that now, because that confidence that Rashford brings to the 11 is infectious. Now, I think that Casemiro kind of does the same. But for me, the guy that you really missed in these last few weeks has been Eriksen. And that kind of showed in the Everton match just in for 15 minutes that a ball player who calms everything down, slows the game down to an applicable pace, and then gets you moving again. That to me is the more important part. But Marcus, losing him now, like we're expecting bad news in the next 24 hours on the groin. Let's just fingers crossed that it's not the worst possible news, which would be out for the season. Maybe he'll be back in a few weeks.
Yeah, that's what I'm expecting. The way he pulled up, maybe a few weeks, won't be back straight away. I'd highly.
He straight away did that in front of us, like he was going, it's gone. Like, and some people are like, oh, he's got cramp. No. Like when the players are going like that, and he's like limping, like he's been shot in the leg, and it's like it all like heartbreak happens when you're in the stadium and you feel that you're like, oh no, because you're only thinking then about the next game. We've got to get over the line in that football match, but at least Man United did do that.
Yes, he was pretty electric in the League Cup tie at Nottingham Forest a few weeks ago. And I think he scored a goal from inside his own half, didn't he? Where he carried the ball. I don't think there's a player in the squad who can really do that in the fashion that Marcus Rashford did. But like I say, United do have options to play on that left-hand side. So how do they go about replacing Marcus Rashford? Now, Jadon Sancho started left against Everton. Marcus Rashford through the middle. I will caveat all this, mind, with this really depends on Erik ten Hag relying on Antony Martial a lot more than he has, obviously, given Martial's injury record this season. But if you can edge Martial back in with 30 minutes here and there over the next couple of games and longer term, get him fit for the remainder, I'm not too angry about a Sancho, Martial, Antony front three. Can Sancho do it? He's proven in the Champions League. He's proven in the Bundesliga. I know it's a different kettle of fish, but Jadon Sancho has proven. I think there's been years where he's had 20 goals, 20 assists. More than once. He can do it. It's just a case of coaxing it out of him. And I'm kind of looking at the Rashford issue and thinking Jadon Sancho's there. He's had a chance. He's never really taken his chance now. There are suggestions that if he's going to, I think I said it on last week's show, he needs to run in the team in order to get up to speed. I kind of have a bit of faith that he'll do it.
Yeah, I do think that slowly but surely, but very quietly, his performance are incrementally improving. So in the last match, he played best part of 70 odd minutes, pass succession rate of 95%, which is absolutely world class and outstanding. I always talk about midfielders and attackers not losing the ball. That's a huge part of the game. But when you do that, Scott, and you hit that kind of level, 95%, that means you're locked in. It's showing that you're not giving the ball away, especially when you're a ball player. So I think with Jadon, we've talked a lot of high stuff about him at the start of the season. He should be the number 7. This is his time. You bought him for this, that, and the other. And then we've gone the opposite way because of what we've seen, that he's not actually been that good overall or not been that reliable. Now, this is the point where Ten Hag is always forced to rotate through injuries and with suspension. We've talked about that a lot this season. So you've lost Marcus. You need someone to play on the left wing. Now, what are you going to do with that shape? I think the big differential here that maybe we've not spoken about too much is that because we've had Bruno playing the 8 because of Eriksen, it's now about, right, what do you do with Bruno in the attack? And I think for Ten Hag, that might be the bigger question about where do you play Bruno Fernandes? Because when Man United play well, Bruno's played wide. That's been their best performance this year. 4-1-5, Bruno in the press in one of the wider roles. But of course, I think we all believe that the wide role is not his best position. But if you've just lost your best player on the left, do you go that way? Do you go back to what's worked this season? Or do you say give Sancho a chance? One of the things that I've repeated before with Jadon is that you're at your time in the season now, Scott, where you have not got time to give chances. It's not, Jadon, go and play yourself into form. There's no time to play yourself into form. We have to go and win. You have to help us win or go sit on a bench and someone else will go and help us win, whether it's an unfashionable player like a Weghorst or whether you turn to someone like Jadon, who's one of your more sparkly, shining, exciting footballers. So, yeah, I thought he did well in the last match. It was interesting to see that he got the nod. And it was also interesting to see that Antony got pulled before him. Because I think the natural thing might have been to pull Jadon at that point. And it was actually Antony who got pulled on the hour mark. So, yeah, big opportunity for him. And if Marcus is out for any period of time, we have got to find that creativity in the final third to be able to score goals. Marcus Rashford is like an isolation basketball player. He says with his basketball top on, where he can get the ball and go and make his play. Can Jadon do that? Well, yes, but we don't see it. Martial can definitely do that. But you need them to work as a unit, Scott. And that's where Bruno Fernandes might be the key to all of this in the final third.
I think that the difference maybe between them is the dynamism and the speed of each of them. Rashford, he's always had that kind of explosive turn of pace, change of direction. Whereas with Sancho, it's kind of more, I don't know what the word is really but kind of elegant in a sense, but not too quick. You know what I mean? Whereas Rashford has developed this year like a killer instinct.
Yeah.
And Erik ten Hag has worked on that with him.
Yeah.
He's always kind of had it, but never had it in quite as much regularity as now. I don't think you'll see that side of Sancho, but he does offer different things in that position. You can see it in the assist. I know it was from the other side for Scott McTominay the other day. That clever pass, which maybe Marcus Rashford isn't capable of.
Completely. And this is why you have to lean on all of your strengths and not just be maybe fixated on just your weaknesses. Like you just said there with Marcus. Marcus's game is that he can either get behind you if you play too high as a defense. He's got that pace. But I've always called him kind of straight line player. Yeah, like he wants to exploit what's in front of him. That's what he does. Jadon's not really like that. Jadon wants more touches of the ball, wants kind of quite happy to play in tighter spaces and maybe play kind of 1-2s out of that zone. I think what we need from Jadon is that elite version from Dortmund who could also get behind the defense. And I think that might be the trick here. But, we haven't spoken about him because he's been injured as well, but kind of smells to me a little bit like a Garnacho setup here. Like if Garnacho can come back in the team and hit the ground running, we don't really know where his status is with that. We do believe that he's not far off. If he can get back in the team in the next week or two and Marcus is out, say worst case scenario to the end of the season, I think Garnacho is the guy that can score you goals. Garnacho is a bit more of a killer on the left side than I think Jadon is. Interesting also to see Jadon get moved to the right in the game because we haven't seen a lot of that this season. And it lasted all of about 5 minutes. The manager literally went to the right, didn't like it and was like, back over that side, mate. Completely moved him back to the left. So really interesting. And I also think that Bruno Fernandes, I'm going to keep saying it, false nine. We've said it in last year that I like the idea of that. If you haven't got a striker that scores you goals, Bruno can score you goals, all types of goals, Scott, in the penalty area if he's in it. If he's in the penalty box, I'm happier the ball falling to him than, say, Weghorst. But then what does that mean? It means you have to do the press still. You have to do all the energy work. You then might have to play with Sabitzer behind you as a 10 because he gives you energy going that way. And you've got to find a way now. This is all about methods, but getting past the madness.
You've just reeled off a bunch of midfielders there. Obviously, with Casemiro and Eriksen back, You've got a lot of options in there. Bruno Fernandes, Scott McTominay, Fred, Marcel Sabitzer, there's a ton of them. So you do have different options in the midfield to change things up a bit. And then maybe, obviously, as you mentioned there, Bruno Fernandes playing wide or through the middle. We haven't really seen him through the middle all that much.
No.
At false nine, whereas we've seen him more on the wings. Antony can play through the middle. He did once. Didn't it's not what I would pick. But let's talk about Tony, shall we? Just because he's had a couple of introductions off the bench, and he got a goal. He always seems to score against Everton. But that was hopefully an indication that he will be able to stay fit. Hopefully an indication that he's getting back up to speed. I know it was a simple finish for him, but if that chance falls to Weghorst at times, you maybe think, is that a necessary guarantee he scores that? I'm not so bothered. Well, of course I'm bothered. I'm not so concerned if Antony Martial is fit and able to play actual minutes during this absence of Marcus Rashford. What are you seeing from him? What does he add to the team when he's there?
Do you know what he does? He just kind of calms everything down. So you talked about, say, like the likes of Eriksen slowing the game down and making it manageable. Antony Martial just gives you that as a centre forward. Like, you can link through him. You can push him into wider areas. He can run the last man. He can press. He can do all those things. And this is kind of maybe like we've seen it with Weghorst, where you become exposed, don't you? Because Weghorst can do the press, but just doesn't score goals. That's a big problem at this point of the season. You need to score goals. So you've got to find a way, haven't you? And with so much written and talks about Antony Martial's injury problems, and unfortunately for him, like the 5 injuries he's had this year, all different ones, all little knocks, all horrible stuff that stop you from training, stop you from being fit. You've got to get over that somehow now, Scott. And you're now at a needs-must scenario again. So no Marcus for X amount of weeks. Antony Martial is going to have to start games. And we only said in our last show, you probably won't get away with starting Antony Martial in games. So that is for me, that is a concern, because I look at this. And if you say get a fit and firing Martial for the end of the season, I think you're all right. I think you'll get top 4. You can do what you need to do. I'm not so interested in the cups anymore. Like, I know we're deep in those competitions, but for me, it's top 4 now. That is it now. You got to get top 4. And if you get top 4, tick that box, go to pre-season and get on with your life. You can do it. But you need Martial for that. And I think you also do need Garnacho. So I think kind of the balance of the attack, it will be about maybe some of these guys that haven't helped us as much this season because of injuries and form, and for them to be able to, burst that bubble, jump out of it, and finally become relevant for Man United. Because even though we've had a good season, Scott, it's been the same protagonists, hasn't it? It has been Casemiro talk, Rashford talk. These guys have carried the football club through what could have been a much more difficult period for us. Now it's up to the likes of, say, Tony Martial to come back into the team and play more minutes than maybe his body will let him. But he's got to push it, because we're at the end of the campaign. And I think he's playing for his career next year. I really do. I think him and Jadon both have got points to prove, and they've got to play like that. They've got to show that they can be on a football pitch for at least an hour and that they can do Ten Hag things.
On Martial's long-term career, that's an interesting point, actually. Let's say United do go out and buy their ultimate long-term striker.
Yeah.
How does he fit in? Does that mean he has to go? Do you think he'll want to go? Because I think he's on too much money for this role, and ultimately he does have to leave. But having him as an understudy to an elite striker is not a bad position to be in if he's fit.
Yeah, I think that's the big thing, if he's fit. So does he really believe that if you say he left Man United tomorrow, and let's say he signed for Tottenham Hotspur because they needed a striker, and he went to Spurs, would he be able to play all the minutes for Tottenham because he wants to play? Probably not. He's probably going to get knocks, isn't he? And not be in the team. So he's probably better as a rotational figure. And maybe he understands that a little bit more now. Like, he's not old. We know this, yeah? Like, if he was fit, I don't think there'd be any problem. We wouldn't be having this debate as much. But I do think that you've seen enough of this season, and maybe even previous seasons, to know that Antony Martial, one thing he isn't is reliable. He's just not physically reliable for whatever reason. If you get these little knocks, Scott, I always think about accumulation. Like, if you had one big injury, that can happen. It could be bad luck. You're out for 6 months or whatever. Those things do happen. But Martial, it's about recovery. So that tells me that Man United will definitely go buy a striker. And then it means, like, what do you do with Martial? Well, he's either going to still be at the club because he's proved that he can score goals and you can use him off the bench. I think he might be all right with that. what you just said there about the contract is really relevant. He's on way too much money for this role player role. You know, you could play a kid there and an 18 or 19-year-old who gives you minutes off the bench. That's not what you want Antony Martial for. This is a French, player who's played at World Cups and big tournaments. You want him available, don't you, all the time? So that's been the issue here, is that he's not been available. It's not really been the issue about whether he's got the quality, which maybe in years gone by it was, wasn't it? It was like, can Martial give you the quality? Well, I think we know that he can. It's just that you got to get him fit. He's got to be able to play.
Real shame, really, that Martial finally is working with a coach who is probably quite suited to him.
Totally.
And we've really not seen enough of him at all. Although even Ten Hag, like he's mentioned the games against City and the games against Liverpool. I think there was the assist that he gave for Rashford's second goal against Liverpool. He came on and scored twice, even though United lost 6-3 against City. Obviously, there's the Everton game the other day. Just very, very small roles, though. But he's got the technical quality to be able to offer United what Ten Hag wants in that position. And he has an extra goal threat, which Weghorst doesn't have.
Totally. I must admit, though, like as a fan, I don't get misty-eyed about these things. Like, to me, I'm not saying footballers are bits of meat, but this is a team sport, and you either help the team or you don't play for us. And I don't really have a lot of wiggle room in that. And I look at Antony Martial, I respect his talent. I think he's a great player. And if he's fit, I want him to play. But if not, then good luck in your career. And we'll go buy someone that can do that, because there are players out there that can. So this is going to be an evolution of a situation here when we get into the summer, because I don't actually think it's about whether Antony Martial is good enough anymore. I think we all believe that he is. It's just that if it's bits of his body don't stop falling off, because that's really important. So that's how I see it. And I think it's a shame for him, but he's got to find a way to stay fit. And I know it's a strange thing to say, but I think the manager has actually said similar things this year about all sorts of players. Like, you've got to be fit for me to select you. And if you're not fit, you can't be selected. And therefore, your place in this squad is at threat. This is your job. You've got to come to work. So coming to work means winning games. So Antony Martial, if you can come to work in the next few weeks and help us win games, then maybe this conversation changes a little bit, Scott. But I don't actually think it will. I think Man United are going to be buying a big-time striker, because you need someone that can play, 60 games a season, like, without thinking. Look at Bruno. Like, I give Bruno stick. Bruno might end the season playing 72 games if he plays every game to the end of the season. Now, that's mad, isn't it? But it shows that Bruno's got the engine. He does it. He doesn't get injured. That's really important. And you need your striker to do that as well.
Touch wood there, Rob. Might want to touch wood.
Fingers crossed. Touch wood. My desk's here in front of me. Touch wood, because those things can happen. But there are players, aren't they, that do seem to have a superpower with their fitness. Like, their fitness just carries on and on and on. They don't get little niggly knocks. They manage their bodies well. And then even someone like Marcus, you always expect these kind of blowout injuries because of what he is. He's always going to blow something out eventually because he's explosive. And that means he's going to be out for a few weeks at some point. So you need a robust squad that can cover those things, because some players just can do it and other players just simply can't. I think with Martial now, a big point of the season for him to show that he can do it. And then maybe he does stay next season, but I really don't think he'll be first choice next year if he's still at Man United.
I'd be remiss. It'd be remiss of me not to mention this, since you just did talk about Bruno Fernandes. I did have a few tweets the other day saying, "Hey, ask Rob about Bruno's performance," because obviously, I think people who listen know that you are quite critical of him at times for his not his inability to keep the ball. Maybe that's the thing, but
two really good performances in midfield. Two great number 8 performances in the last 2 games. Well done, Bruno. What about the other performances? So this is the thing. Like, I was pleased that Bruno played so well in the last game, and you needed that. If you didn't have Bruno playing well in that 8, you lose to Everton. That's what happens. Again, I'm not misty-eyed about these things, just trying to call it flat and straight. And I think with Bruno, the problem for him is that because he can do so many things well, that he's the kind of player that gets used in the versatile roles. Do you know what I mean? People saying, we're going to stay Bruno as the 8 now. Like, well, no, Eriksen's back. Eriksen will play the 8. It's like when Casemiro's there, who's playing your number 6? It ain't Scott McTominay. So it's one of these things, is that Bruno did really well in those last games, but he's played 2 or 3 times in midfield and played well. And then also had 2, 3, 4 games where he wasn't as good. I don't really blame him for that. I don't want to see him deep in a football pitch, Scott. Do you? So I get that all the time. It's like you hate Bruno, Rob. It's like, oh, I'm so bored of it. I don't hate Bruno. I just want Bruno to be the best version that he can be. And I think now with Marcus being out the pitch, you need Bruno higher up the pitch. You need him in those attacking areas because he's still a great number 10 in those parts of the pitch, I think. But I think he'll play wide. I think that's what we're going to end up seeing with him. I would not be surprised to see him on the left doing the Marcus role and Antony on the right.
You mentioned Christian Eriksen there. He is now back. I have this not agenda, but I have a campaign that bearded Christian Eriksen is going to be the best Christian Eriksen that we've ever seen. Because he just looks older and wiser and a little bit more rugged. And he's been burned by this awful tackle that Andy Carroll put on him in January. And now he's back and he's going to be the best version of Christian. I don't want to put pressure on him. He's done a Man United channel podcast as well this week. I haven't had a chance to see it yet, but some nice quotes coming out about him. He just looks to me. I tweeted a picture of him with his beard in training, and I had pictures sent back to me of Andrea Pirlo in a beard in his mid-30s, and I thought, I mean, he's not going to play back deep, but can he be the same figure or a similar figure?
Pretty good comparison because Pirlo was a player that got deeper in his latter years and got better. Just like seemed to be more of a fine wine. When you popped that cork, everything, the liquor that poured out was beautiful. And I think when you look at Eriksen, he came on, didn't he, for those final moments, kind of later in the game, kind of got a good 20-minute window in there. And I said to you off camera, he just calmed the world down because when the ball is at his feet, he's not going to lose it. And it means so much in midfield. Like that is 9/10 of the law. Is possession. So this guy can play possession, Scott, but can also play the pass. There's also been a lot of talk about what is a playmaker. And I think playmaking doesn't come in your front line. Playmaking comes in that midfield role now and in the centre. They're the ones that open the doors and the windows for you to get forward. And Eriksen's that guy for me. Like you're just saying there, beard watch. And I'm sure we'll be watching it in the weeks ahead. A better Christian Eriksen in there, say, than a better midfielder than what we've had with the likes of McTominay, Fred, Bruno, all those combinations. If you've got a number 8 in there that can open the door, you might even see that someone like Weghorst gets better opportunities. If he's in the team, he might score some more goals. I've said, haven't I, for weeks that United's creativity or lack of it is why those frontline players sometimes struggle because you're not really making those good passes. Eriksen can do that. He did it against Everton just for a short time. Got to keep him fit. And he's got to start, hasn't he? That this is the same now with Casemiro. If those two guys start, it solves a lot of your outward problems. Yeah, in midfield, like getting the ball forward and ball progression. Those were the two that were really making you tick. And they were the ones helping Marcus get all those goals. So hopefully they can link up with the forwards now. But yeah, just really excited to kind of see him back. Maybe more than we ever thought we would be, say, a year ago when we signed him. Thinking, this guy's going to be our number 8. He's such an important player in the squad now because there's no one else like him.
With a great beard comes great power. We will see. Hopefully, Christian Eriksen, he was great when he came on. Like you could just see exactly what you miss when Christian Eriksen isn't there, even in about 20 minutes or however long he was on the pitch against Everton. Just has that ability with the ball that a lot of United midfielders just don't have.
Yeah, some players, see the game like there, tunnel vision. That's how I see the game. Christian Eriksen sees the game in widescreen. And you see it when he gets the ball, there's never anyone near him. And that's because he's worked out where he can get the ball where no one's near him. It's an art. It really is an art. Some players, like Scotty, will just run through players, lose the ball, and have a 75% pass succession rate. So, yeah, beard watch. This is, I think, where we're going in the next few weeks. Let's get Casemiro to grow a beard as well, and then we can start making T-shirts.
Rob and I are sporting quite thick beards today. So
we are.
Yeah.
I think this is called not shaving, though.
Well, mine. I'm going to the barber's today, actually, so I have mine tidied up a little bit. But yeah, I'm a big advocate of beards. More beards in the United team, please. With it comes more experience. And let's see. I don't know why we're talking about beards, but anyway, my notes have actually come to an end. We were only going to keep this one to half an hour. Anything you want to touch on before we leave today, Rob?
No, I think it's a really interesting period now for Man United. And I think that we've got to this point in the season now where needs must, as we've said, and we need to win football matches. And in some ways, that gets a little bit boring, doesn't it, when we talk about it? Just go and win. Like, we don't care if you play well anymore. And we don't actually care who gets the goals. Just get some goals and win football matches. And that's how I felt about Brentford and Everton. That's how I feel about Sevilla. That's how I feel about all of the rest of the season now. We've seen enough this year to get an educated view about where Man United are in their skin, haven't we? We kind of know where this squad is and how you need to get to the next level. And we'll talk a lot about that in the weeks ahead. But again, I kind of feel a bit quietly okay about stuff against Scott. Like, maybe we all felt a little bit down the last few weeks, and I think performances did dip. And there was a lot of evidence to suggest that Man United were going in the wrong direction. You just hope that with Casemiro and Eriksen now, that you've stabilised that part, and that, let's say you get Garnacho back in a few weeks or in the next few games, you've got a good balance again. It feels like you can transition in attack, can't you? You've got players that run in the right place on the football pitch. But big weeks for Jadon Sancho and for Antony Martial. I think they are the keys to maybe either just coping or really being successful. Like Man United kick on towards the end of the campaign. Wouldn't it be nice, Scott? Hands here, hand praying emoji. Wouldn't it be good if Man United just don't make a fuss of the rest of this season, get top four and do it comfortably, and we're not looking over our shoulders going, oh, look, Harry Kane scored some goals for Spurs. Oh, Son's come back into form. Oh, look, Liverpool suddenly started winning, even though I don't think we'll be saying that last bit. All of this stuff could happen.
12 points behind United now.
Yeah, they're 12 points behind Man United, and I think Liverpool fans are still saying we're going to win the league. So, you know, it's just what it is, isn't it? But you want to make your point, don't you? You want to get in that top four now. Don't worry about Newcastle too much. Just worry about yourselves. Score the goals that Marcus has been giving you. And let's see if someone in the squad can step up. This is where now there's an opportunity, isn't there? Like if Jadon Sancho can end the season well, say last 10 games of the campaign, Scott, kind of the whole season gets forgotten, doesn't it? You go into the summer and it's all clean slate. You go, yeah, Jadon's going to help me next year. But if he doesn't, I think then we will be talking about maybe Jadon Sancho being sold, potentially. There is that wild swing of opinion, isn't there, on certain players? And I think with Antony Martial, that's going to be there as well. He might play really well towards the end of the season. You just need him to score goals. And if he does that, it might be a different conversation in the summer about whether you keep him. So interesting time, Scott. Lots to talk about in the next few weeks.
I think that's why I'm not looking at this with too much worry currently, just because, like I said at the top, I have confidence that eventually these players will deliver, and especially Jadon Sancho. I feel like he's got too much talent there to not show his true form.
I'm going to sit on the fence with Jadon because I've talked him up a lot in weeks gone by and said I think he should be the number 7. He can do it. He can do it. But he hasn't proved me right yet, and he hasn't proved you right. So I think the thing is now with Jadon is that he just needs more of what he did against Everton. You don't need spectacular every week, Scott. You just need to be effective. Don't lose the ball. Help the team. I think he is doing that a little bit more now. Whether he is your guy that you thought he was, like the 75, 80 million pound player who's going to transform your attack for years to come, debatable. Like I think we're seeing how difficult it is for players to do well in one league and then come to this league and do well. I think he's struggling with that transition, that transformation. But he's got to do it at some point, or otherwise you sit on the bench and then eventually your wage becomes a problem, doesn't it? If you're on 200, 300, 400 grand a week, but you're only playing 20 minutes a game now and then your rotational piece. No, that's what you want Garnacho to be. You want your 18 and 19-year-olds to do that, not your Jadon. So a big few weeks for him. And I think a good opportunity for him to prove a lot of people wrong, but also to maybe prove us right from earlier on in the season when we said that he could be the number 7. Does he get the number 7 shirt for you, Scott, next year now as things stand?
As things stand? I've been an advocate for it, but no, currently he's got to use this period of time to prove his worth. And I think he's been waiting for a chance like this to show what he's all about in a Man United shirt. And I feel like there's basically all the competition is gone because it's injured at the moment. Garnacho and Rashford, who are the 2 players probably ahead of him in the pecking order, are not there. Now is your time to prove that you don't just give these positions back.
Yes. And look, at the start of the season, we both said it, and I said it, that I want Jadon to get the number 7. I'm going to retract that now. I am, because I think with that shirt comes great responsibility and ridiculous amounts of pressure, like crazy amounts of pressure. And if you have that 7 on your back, it ramps everything up to a certain level. I don't think Jadon needs that. I don't think he needs it in his life. He really doesn't. So, like, I think before where it made sense that he was the 7, and that was really what he came to the club to be until Ronaldo came. I think we keep that shirt now on the burner and we give it to someone else next year, either a new signing, or you go the opposite way, Scott, and give it to someone like Garnacho, new contract, long term, number 7, and you do it like you did with Ronaldo and say build your way into that, and you've got the innate confidence. I don't know if Jadon's got that. I don't know. And again, that's a conversation for another day. But if he's going to become effective at Man United, he's got to start helping us win football matches and getting back to the best version that he was at Borussia Dortmund.
And that time is now. We will be back soon. Subscribe to our show wherever you get your podcasts, on Apple, Google, Spotify, and the likes, and watch us on YouTube as well. Head over to the channel, like, subscribe, leave a comment for us on anything that we've discussed today. How will Man United cope without Marcus Rashford? We don't know the exact time frame of his injury yet, but who will be? Will there be a player who can step into that responsibility and deliver on it? Jadon Sancho, Antony Martial, we are hoping for more to come from them over the next few weeks in Rashford's absence, but leave a comment for us. Get in touch with us on Twitter as well, @_Scott Saunders, @_Rob_B, and @PromiseLandMU for the show. Thanks for listening, everyone. We'll see you very soon for another Promised Land Manchester United podcast.